Yo, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. We recently had a sit-down Star Citizen Live with the audio team updating us on all things sounds in Star Citizen, and it was a belter of an episode not to be missed. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you all so much for the support. It is truly appreciated. So Star Citizen Live last week spent about an hour answering our questions around all things audio, and this episode had two existing members of the audio team, plus a new hire who was hired to be the new audio director for Star Citizen, and his role is to not just make the game more cinematic and immersive, but he has also been given the task of doubling the audio members so that they can tackle the necessary requirements. Now, he does later on explain how they are obviously heavily focused on what we have coming to Star Citizen to get to 1.0 and beyond, but also how to address the legacy stuff, getting that sorted and out and up to snuff with what we have currently, while also improving what we have and listening to what we want, what we don't want, and actioning on all of this as well. Now, for me, sound, as for many of you I'm sure, is of the utmost importance, as it can really make or break any form of media, and if it doesn't work well, it can just ruin the experience, which is often the case in Star Citizen due to bugs where audio will either cut out or be non-existent, and as I say, it rips you out of that experience. But when audio is done right, it just hits different. Now, watching this, I was very happy to see someone with a lot of experience come on board to not just take what we have to that next level of what we all want, which I will get to in a minute, but also build a bigger team to tackle the game as it grows, handle the backlog of legacy audio that needs either updating, adding to, or just getting rid of entirely, and improving and fixing the issues that we currently have. Also, he does mention that he is looking forwards to and wants the community to tell him what isn't working and what we want, as he wants to build a good solid relationship with us all to get Star Citizen's audio to where it needs to be. Now, everything that this team said during this episode, I was really happy to hear, as it completely aligns with what Chris Roberts has always said he wants, which is immersive, realistic sounds for all areas, be that ships, environments, creatures, ATC, and so on, to really push Star Citizen so its soundscape works and enhances every single aspect. Now, this new audio director and his team have just recently held a meeting to outline their roadmap for what they need to do to get to 1.0, and he has a lot of sonic features and goals, he says, that he wants to bring to Star Citizen. Now, he does continuously say that immersion and cinematics are very important to him, so every environment you are in, you should really feel and truly feel like you are there. In particular, spaceships. He wants things to rock and vibrate, and he wants us to feel moved and give us a true sense as if we are in that ship and things are going on around us. Now, this of course is all words, but coming from a movie background, I can only imagine how this is going to sound wandering through our ships, or any environment really, and hearing all sorts of clangs and reverberation and metallic sounds, giving us a real sense that we are in the middle of space all alone, or blasting our afterburners in atmosphere, especially once the new flight experience comes along, which they do speak about here as it does relate. But this is going to be a long video, as there is a lot to cover, so be sure to get a drink and settle in. Also, if you are after anything Star Citizen, especially things like ships that are no longer available on the official website or a specific CCU, then do check out the IMPOUND, and using the link below will get you 5% off any purchase, plus support my channel with a direct kickback. And a huge thank you to all of you who have done so already. Anyway, let us get to the Q&A, as this delves deep into what needs doing and what they will be doing. First question is, what happened to the Flyby sounds from years ago, and will they ever come back? Now, the sounds, they say, will come back, but they will also come back with a lot more enthusiasm, and he wants us to feel the ships fly by way of vibrations and reverberation. Now, it will be great to get these sounds back in, well, not just back in, but much better, plus having the sounds be an early warning sign will be very helpful, so we can hear vehicles like ships approaching from a distance and not just great flybys. All of it needs to work great. Next question is, what is the state of the realistic audio mode? Now, right now, they have to treat each sound that they have with this realistic audio mode, and that is going to take some time as there are a lot of sounds. I think right now they say there are about 700,000, but currently they are working on getting this work into the schedule so that they can keep pushing with it. The priority, he says, is all things ships and vehicles, which means everything that entails a vehicle, and then beyond that, they will be looking at getting the rest moved over to realistic audio mode as well. Now, it does sound like with the recent hire of this director and the meetings that they have had, I think on last Thursday, they have just basically outlined their plans and roadmap to get to 1.0. Next is the scheduling to get a plan in place for what gets done first, and then they will get onto all of this. Now, as they say, ships and vehicles are their priority, as it should be, so it sounds like they will be working on everything related to ships first, getting that up to snuff, and then moving on to the rest. Next question, can we have a more professional sounding distress call from NPC pilots getting attacked? And they say yes, the audio team alongside the narrative team have been given a recent high-level mandate to bring a lot more dialogue into the game to make the missions and ATC and generally just being in the verse feel more like an experience. So talking with NPCs, the ATC guys as well, fleshing that out properly. Now, this is certainly something that is desperately needed to create this kind of living, breathing world that Cloud Imperium are striving for. NPCs are definitely better than what they have been, but we are still lacking that feeling of a living environment where people are actually coming and going and doing what they should be doing. Now, we do know recently there was a social vertical slice, they called it, which was created for internal use only, unfortunately. But this is where they wanted to show off how an environment should feel with everything kind of final, as a way to show all at Cloud Imperium, all the developers, where they want to get to. So this is clearly a top priority for Star Citizen right now, and I do hope that they can make all of the LZs and other locations and points of interest feel like people are actually living there. Next question is basically ship horns, please. Now, horns were not something that they were necessarily thinking of, but it is possible. Be that a general horn or a war horn, like we hear on War of the Worlds tripod horns. Now, this would actually be a very cool addition, although it will 100% get abused all of the time. All landing zones will just be a wash of war horns as ships come and go, but I can just imagine how chilling it would be if you are fighting in a planet-side FPS battle, for example, and then suddenly you hear this warhorn blasting above you in the skies just as a capital ship emerges through the clouds. I think that would be phenomenal. Next question, will we ever have radio stations to tune into? And yes, I mean, this is something that Chris has wanted for a while and has always stated that he wants us to be able to listen to inverse radio stations. But they were just talking about this the day before Star Citizen Live. Stations that could be exclusive to certain planets, and as you fly away, you lose that transmission or signal. Or you could just be flying close to a colony, and you might receive a different style of radio station. Now, the stations can include music, adverts, news, shipping forecasts, and so much more. And as mentioned, Chris has wanted this forever, and I would personally love to see bands like Gutter Wash or the Lidos, these inverse bands, have actual musicians record the songs so that we can listen to them in the verse. I think that would be amazing. But yeah, I guess regardless of how long this has been in the plans, it is all about resources and priorities, so glad to know that it is still on the cards, but I suspect Squadron, the PU, ships, those sorts of things are more of a priority than a radio station. Next question. Will we see more audio for ships in their damaged states? And of course this ties back to the current priority, which is to elevate all vehicles and ship sounds across the board. So this means it'll absolutely include damaged states. Now, they say the plan is to make sure that all ships have more of a personality and a presence in terms of audio. And part of the benefits of this StarAudio tech is that the audio tools really helps to speed up and make the sound team's jobs even easier and consistent when it comes to hooking up the sounds in game. And this will also mean that sounds for the ships are aware of what is happening around you. And what that means is that if you take damage, for example, or your ship degrades, you will hear the impacts from where your ship was hit resonating down the corridors, or your components on your ships actually giving out differing sounds depending on their condition state. So you could potentially hear something is on its way out or about to break or malfunction just from an audible cue that something might not be right before it actually breaks, giving you a bit of a quicker, an engineer, a good engineer on board your ship will know something is needing replacing or repairing before it actually breaks. But alarms as well will also be a thing, so properly alerting those on board that something is not right. Now the next question, a big question, especially for me and a lot of the people I play with, is VOIP. Now, VOIP, the question being about, are you going to fix it? The current issue with VOIP is that the system was initially built for around 50 players to use. So back when the server could only hold 50 players. Now the persistent universe can have up to 600 players on the server, and VOIP's backend just cannot handle this. Plus, it needs to be able to communicate cross shards, so with server meshing, so there is quite a bit of backend work to be done to make this possible before the VoIP system can get back to working properly again. Now this falls with the Montreal team, not the audio team, but once they have fixed this back-end stuff, then the audio team can hook it back up properly. And then for ship tannoys, so internal ship communications, they do want this to be a thing. For example, communicating with the engine room while you are on the bridge, but also being able to announce externally to those who might be outside, which would be very cool. You could be in the middle of a salvaging op in your reclaimer and then you see a ship coming in or a creature approaching your team on the ground. You could announce to that ground team to get back on board. But of course, VoIP's backend again needs to be updated for this because it is using the same system. Hopefully we're not waiting too long for that. On the subject of VoIP and FOIP and the Montreal team, Jared did say that in a couple of weeks there will be a show with Benoit, following up from what he spoke about in a previous show, which is essentially talking about the back-end tech, like server meshing, so we should get updated on the progress of dynamic server meshing, but they will also speak about VoIP and FOIP and anything else that he wants to talk about, so very excited for that show. That's in a couple of weeks. Now, next question is, are there plans to update the sound effects for rain? And yes, they will have sounds for all different types of rain, all the different material types that rain can fall onto, the angle of rain, the speed and its intensity of the rain. It is a huge system that will continue to evolve, as well as its mixing to make sure that it doesn't just sound like intense white noise. They will be fully supporting the full dynamic weather system as that begins to roll out. Now, I am sure we are all wanting precipitation on all levels to sound perfect, so I am very glad to hear this, but I expected this to be the case anyway. Next question is, are there plans for enhancing ATC chatter? Now, ATC being the air traffic controller, they say yes. They want a lot of ATC for all locations, and they will heavily include the narrative team here to make sure that it all sounds appropriate for the location, but they want to increase the ATC chatter to feel more realistic, and it is part of this whole mandate to get more dialogue into the game. Now, they're not just talking traditional direct ATC communication dialogue either. They want things like open comms ATC channels for when you go near a point of interest to kind of give life to that location and make it all contextual to what might be going on in the environment. So it's not just random. Now, ATC is a big interest for this new audio director, so he is very much looking forward to bringing this into the game, and personally this will really add to that overall sense of that living, breathing world, having ATC chatter feeding through your ship comms so that you can hear all the activity in the location, making it sound like it is a bustling location if it needs to, with things and vehicles coming and going. So really looking forward to hearing that get fleshed out more. Next question. Some ships are just silent, while others who had distinctive engine sounds no longer do. What is going on here? Now, they say a lot of this is to do with the change to the flight models and how they haven't been able to get around all of the ships to get them up to date with the flight model changes. But alongside updating all the ships to be hooked into this new flight model that is on the way, they want to use this opportunity to also update the ships to use better and new audio as well. So giving them a refresh, as many of the ships are like 8 to 9 years old. Now, this means that it's not just the newly released ships and vehicles that are getting the new sounds, it is also all the legacy ships and vehicles as well. Now, during this question, it was mentioned that they have been given the resources to double the size of the department to turn this stuff around quickly, basically. And vehicles is, as stated, the current most important thing right now. The whole flight and vehicle experience is going to change drastically, and it is big priority. Now, this really feels like Cloud Imperium are pushing things, and with just the audio team alone, pushing to increase their team and resources to take the sound experience to that next level. And not just that, but make it consistent is so important. Chances are this is all very much primarily to get Squadron ready for its release next year, but all of those benefits to Squadron benefit the PU, and these sound updates, along with the flight updates, should make the whole experience in our ships just feel incredible. Next question. Talk to us about how you are going to keep the new stuff good and flowing, but also tackle the backlog. Now, as mentioned, with the increase in resources for the audio team, they are already tackling the new content and pushing that out to what he says is an extremely high standard, while others are working in parallel to this to update and elevate the backlog of sounds in general. And then, as mentioned previously, the third aspect of what he wants to do here is to build that relationship with the community and with his own team, so that he knows what we want, what we don't want, what we don't like, and basically bring in what we all really want to hear. Now, all of this legacy work, he says, will be broken down into categories first, so that it can be tackled properly. And right off the bat, as mentioned, the priority is ships and vehicles. Then there is things like creatures, foley, which is, say, the sound of footsteps, for example, weapons, ambience, weather, planets, everything. So breaking it all down so that they can address each one, analyze it all, and then evaluate and improve it. And the way they will prioritize what's done first is partly what Star Citizen needs and other teams at CIG need, but also what we want. So great to hear that, and hopefully the other teams can follow suit and do a similar thing with their backlog and tech debt, getting everything up to snuff. Now, the next question is simply, do you plan to improve audio for SEU containers, as they all sound very empty? And he says, yes, everything will be addressed, not just these SEU containers, but this will include the weights of every object. It all needs to feel real and make sense. And one thing that they will do to give much more presence to stuff is by giving everything a sense of weight. Now, not necessarily just making something sound heavy, but a sense of weight in terms of like a door opening. The door should feel like it has something behind it, or something getting struck as if it was actually physical. And I do love their intention here. Hopefully that can be portrayed perfectly in the game as well. Now, next question is simply just about vibrations. And this is generally what they mean by their reverberation system. And it is of great importance for Star Citizen, with reverberation being a large part of the audio experience. And what they mean by this is, if a ship gets hit by a missile, for example, they want you to hear all the parts of the ship and the items on board reverberating or vibrating as you would expect them to in the real world. And this is even down to things like flybys. If a ship flies past you at great speed in real life, things around you can feel vibrating. You can feel the floor vibrating and items on the floor vibrating from that flyby. And they want that to be the case in the PU as well. This, I feel, will certainly bring Star Citizen to that next level in terms of sound design. Taking it beyond just our ears and giving a sense of haptics will just be amazing. Next question. Star Citizen lacks large-scale ambient soundscapes. It would be so cool to be on the outskirts of a city and hear things like the hustle and bustle of traffic and sirens, giving that sense that we are at a distance and outside of that. Now, this was a very interesting question, Vic. Good call there, mate. And it really got the team thinking. There is so much propagation, echo, and reverb required to make this sound right, instead of it just sounding like a bunch of audible mush. They will consider this at some point, but they don't really know how to tackle it at this time. They did say that audio LODs, or level of details, might be involved here, so varying sound changes as you move to varying distances. But a great question, and I hope they can find a way to make it possible and work properly, but it is good to see them just spitballing over potential techniques together and figuring out how they could make it work without even putting pen to paper. It was interesting to see that. Now, the next question is, will we get an option to choose our audio options, like 5.1 stereo and so forth? And they say yes, they actually thought that this was working, as it was automatically based on what your PC is set to, but they understand that this doesn't work right now. A fix is in the works, which also includes a drop-down option in the game's audio settings, allowing you to choose what you want, and this will hopefully be out for the next release, if not one shortly after that, which is definitely good news. Next question is, are there plans to replace the footstep sounds, as it sounds the same everywhere? And yes, absolutely, they will be replacing as much of the Foley as they see fit, or improving it as well, and it will have as much resonance and weight as it should have. This was also caused by a bug, apparently, that has been recently fixed, so again, should be updated for an upcoming patch, and then obviously longer term, better Foley in general. Now, I really hope that with all of the realistic audio and plans to make Star Citizen more cinematic and immersive from an audible standpoint specifically, that this might be taking the Foley and footsteps to the level of Escape from Tarkov, in which PvP stealth can properly exist, and moving very slowly depending on the surface material that you are on can be realistic and rewarding if you're doing it properly, and not just based on things like armor stats. I really hope that is the case. Next question. Currently, the sound of, say, a Polaris or Idris hovering above the ground is practically silent. Will we see improvements to this? And again, yes, this feeds into the whole vehicle improvements. That is their priority. You need to know that a ship of such weight and presence is there. Even smaller ships need to make sense, that you are hearing it before you're seeing it to some degree. So yes. Anyway, that was a great and very uplifting interview that has very much excited me for the future of audio in Star Citizen going forwards. Hearing that they are really building up the team first and foremost to not just make audio in Star Citizen as good as it can be, but also fix the issues, bring all that legacy stuff up to the current standards, while really pushing for that immersive and cinematic experience is just gonna blow us away. Hearing all of this stuff come along so that we no longer have missing audio or broken audio will make me very happy. Anyway, that is it for the show. If you are interested in converting your phone or tablet into your ship's dashboard, do check out GameGlass. I can get you 15% off a lifetime pass, and using that link will also give my channel a direct kickback, so a big thank you to you all. If you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also, I am having a blast with my org on my live streams right now. You can watch me here on YouTube or over at twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother, trying to gather as many resources for this resource drive event. Having such fun mining and working together. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Cannot do this without you guys, so thank you for the support, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.